Welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right into one of the most wildly debated and just downright fascinating mysteries of the 20th century. We're heading back to late December 1980 to a dense patch of woodland in Suffolk, England. It sits right next to the twin military bases of RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge. The events that went down here are so profound, they've actually earned the nickname Britain's Roswell. We're going to unpack the chaotic timeline, the staggering physical evidence, and the intense cover-up that allegedly followed. Let's get into it.
To really grasp the gravity of this incident, you just have to listen to the frantic, real-time audio recorded on a microcassette by the deputy base commander himself, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt. On the tape, you can hear him yell, "There it is again! It's coming this way!" You know, this wasn't some tall tale told decades later at a bar. This was an active, totally terrified military commander out on patrol in the pitch black, watching something entirely impossible unfold right in front of him.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The setting. To understand the stakes, we have to look at the contrast of the location. On one hand, you've got Rendlesham Forest, owned by the Forestry Commission. It's essentially just 6 square miles of sleepy, quiet British pine plantation. But literally right next door, RAF Bentwaters. And this wasn't just your standard airbase. It housed a massive, highly sensitive arsenal of tactical nuclear weapons in underground NATO bunkers. So you have to realize, any security breach in these quiet woods wasn't just a weird anomaly, it was a potential global Cold War emergency.
Section 2. The 3 Nights.
So let's map this out clearly, because this wasn't just a single, fleeting sighting. It was sustained, escalating chaos over 3 nights in late December. It kicks off around 3 a.m. on December 26th, with multicolored lights dropping into the forest, leaving physical ground traces. Night 2, between the 26th and 27th, involves a violent encounter where a glowing sphere actually swoops at a security jeep. And then the climax hits in the early hours of December 28th, where Colonel Halt takes a team into the woods, and they end up tracking a glowing red eye that's literally shooting out laser beams.
Let's break down exactly what happened on that first night. A few airmen spot lights, suspect a crashed aircraft, and a patrol goes in. According to Sergeant Jim Peniston, what they found was a full-blown close encounter of the third kind. He claims he walked right up to a triangular craft sitting in a small clearing. He said it was about 9 feet wide, 6 feet high, and made of this warm, black, glass-like material. He even said he touched it, noting these weird hieroglyphic symbols on the hull. After about 45 minutes, he says the craft silently lifted off and just vanished, leaving 3 distinct indentations in the ground, burn marks on the trees, and snapped branches in the canopy directly above.
So the crucial point here is this number, 0.07. Because later that very morning, base personnel came out and took radiation readings at the landing site. They found levels peaking at 0.05 to 0.07 millirengens per hour, specifically inside those 3 ground depressions. Now, while that's only slightly above normal background radiation, the fact that it was elevated exactly where the alleged landing gear sat, well, that provided physical, measurable data that something physically altered that site.
Moving to the second night, which, by the way, was heavily suppressed for years, a female USAF security officer, Lieutenant Bonnie Tamplin, was driving a jeep between the 2 bases. Out of nowhere, a glowing, reddish-orange fiery sphere swoops down, paces her jeep, and then sharply cuts right in front of her. It terrified her to the point where she actually unholstered her service weapon and fired at it. When backup arrived, she was in tears, her uniform was disheveled, and she was quickly medically evacuated back to the U.S. Think about that. An American military officer discharging her weapon at a swooping sphere. It really highlights the genuine panic they were experiencing.
Which brings us to the famous third night. Colonel Halt decides he's had enough and goes out to investigate himself. And it's just absolute chaos out there. They're tracking this pulsing red light that looked like a winking eye floating through the trees, occasionally dripping glowing molten particles to the ground. Halt's team literally had to dive for cover to dodge these narrow, blue laser-like beams shooting down at them. Meanwhile, base radar operators are on the radio confirming high-velocity objects buzzing around on their scopes. And the most terrifying part? Halt reports a craft shining bright beams directly down into the weapons storage area, the exact bunkers holding the nuclear warheads.
Section 3. The Capel Green Escalation.
Now, things escalate to an incredibly controversial climax simultaneously out in an open field near the forest edge called Capel Green. This comes from whistleblower Airman Larry Warren. He claims there was a 20-foot triangular craft glowing snow white sitting in the field. He says a ground mist actually coalesced and formed the craft in a sudden flash. There's a massive ring of U.S. security personnel and local UK police standing around, just watching in total awe. And then Warren claims 3 humanoid entities, maybe 3 to 4 feet tall with large heads, separated out from the craft's light. He described them as looking almost translucent. It gets stranger. Warren reported feeling this altered time bubble state, like heavy static electricity in the air. He claimed to experience direct telepathic communication, not hearing a voice, but receiving a distinct mental impression from these beings asking, "Why are you here?" Right after that, he says the craft shot away, literally in the blink of an eye.
Section 4. Skeptics versus official explanations.
Now let's pull back and look at this impartially, because skeptics have some very grounded explanations. Researcher Ian Ridpath proposes that the glowing eye Halt saw was actually just the sweeping beam of the nearby Orford Ness lighthouse flashing through the trees. The initial lights on December 26th, well, there was a confirmed fireball meteor over southern England at that exact time. The hovering lights? Just the bright star Sirius twinkling near the horizon. And the physical ground traces? Police chalked them up to rabbit diggings and normal forest debris. But the airmen? They push back hard on this. They argue that trained military personnel do not mistake a lighthouse for a physical craft dropping molten metal and shooting lasers at their feet.
And we have to mention this incredibly colorful theory investigated by Dr. David Clark. The rumor goes that British Special Forces, the SAS, had been caught and roughed up by overzealous USAS security earlier that year. So, for revenge, the SAS allegedly snuck into the woods and orchestrated a massive, terrifying hoax using remote-controlled kites, flares, and black helium balloons. It's an amazing story, but Clark concluded it remains completely unproven hearsay. Plus, it really doesn't explain the close-up encounters or the military radar hits.
Section 5. Evidence of the impossible.
So let's pivot back to the hard data here, because the corroborating evidence for something truly anomalous is overwhelming. You've got over a dozen trained military witnesses, guys literally trusted to guard nuclear weapons. You have the Halt tape capturing their real-time panic. You have radar operators actively confirming high-velocity targets. What's more, Larry Warren, whose Capel Green story was dismissed by many for years, actually passed a top-level polygraph test in 2022, administered by renowned examiner Pat Ryder. And finally, this entire event perfectly fits a well-documented historical pattern of UFOs actively hovering over and tampering with nuclear sites.
And this brilliantly illustrates the tension of the whole mystery. Listen to this quote from General Gordon Williams, the U.S. Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence back in 1980. Larry Warren claims Williams was actually present out there at the Capel Green landing. When Williams was asked about it years later, he gave this incredibly cryptic reply. "We knew what it was at the time, but we couldn't tell you." Which immediately makes you wonder, what exactly did the absolute highest levels of command know about what was in those woods?
Section 6. The Deep State Cover-Up. Well, according to the witnesses, the immediate reaction was extreme secrecy. Agents from the Office of Special Investigations swooped in, took absolute control, and ruthlessly debriefed the airmen. Warren says he was forced to sign harsh non-disclosure agreements and claims one agent chillingly told him that bullets are cheap if he ever decided to talk. Any 35mm photos or motion picture film taken at Capel Green were instantly confiscated. And publicly, the British Ministry of Defense just dismissed the whole thing as posing no threat to defense and quietly swept it under the rug.
So how exactly does a sprawling incident involving dozens of people get buried so effectively? The source material points to author M.D. Selig's concept of an alien deep state. In his book, Hush, Selig describes how covert intelligence cabals and powerful aerospace defense contractors, places like Lockheed's Skunk Works, manage UFO secrets completely off the books. Under this theory, an event involving advanced craft right on top of nuclear weapons wouldn't go to the president. It would be instantly compartmentalized and locked down by this hidden infrastructure.
And Colonel Halt himself eventually came to believe exactly this. During a 2010 press statement, he absolutely did not hold back. He directly accused both the US and UK security services of an active, ongoing cover-up. He firmly stated that they used well-practiced methods of disinformation to intentionally subvert the truth of what really happened out there.
We've looked at the escalating timeline, the physical radiation traces, the skeptical theories of lighthouses and meteors, and the deeply corroborated testimonies of the military personnel who lived through it. So I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on. If this was just a flashing lighthouse, if it was just twinkling stars and a few rabbit tracks in the dirt, why the violent threats? Why the confiscated film? Why the massive wall of silence? I highly encourage you to dive into the source material yourself, because the mysteries of Rendlesham Forest are far from solved. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what's out there.
You've been listening to the Weaving the Lightnet TLDR. To explore more about any of these topics, visit lightnet.co.uk or listen to the full deep dive podcast episode linked below. Give the video a like, share this episode with others who would appreciate it, and subscribe to join us next week as we continue weaving the web of planetary consciousness together. Stay sovereign.